even if we have to extend the time frame, I think that one is more interesting and it would generate a lot more usage. And that's just my opinion, but I really like the first one.
It's different.
Based on my conversations with Brookfield Properties, if they can make it work within the time period that they're allotted to complete this project, they will complete play structure number 1. So.
Okay, but if we need to extend it.
Let me clarify further. They have their own internal deadline to complete this project by the end of the year, and which is why they kind of asked for that flexibility. So this whole project doesn't fall apart if they can't complete the first play structure. So
that's good to know.
Yeah.
Thank you. Are we voting on this?
Yeah. Any other comment? So we'll go forward with the consideration and action of the performance agreement between SL4B Corporation and First Quality Mall. Have a motion to approve.
Motion to approve.
Second. All in favor? Aye. Unanimously approved. All right. Thank you.
Okay, before the next public hearings, I have a presentation over the next 3 funding resolutions. And Director Besesny's, you're good to stay and until the voting for the items. Then you will recuse yourself. So on May 15th of 2024, you may recall that the Board of Directors for the SL4B approved 3 resolutions approving funding for the fiscal year 24 fund grant projects for Glen Laurel's HOA's perimeter fencing project, Sugar Mill HOA's perimeter fencing project, and Friends of Old Sugarland's light pole banner project. Following Hurricane Beryl, homeowners associations found it difficult to obtain timely responses and written consent from Centerpoint to meet the requirements of these previously approved funding resolutions for these projects. And so due to these delays, the prior funding resolutions for these projects expired on December 31st of 2024. And so these new funding resolutions are needed. And just some background here, we started to include these deadlines in the funding resolutions for these fund grant projects to help to ensure that the HOAs participating in this program were completing their projects in a timely manner. While it's each HOA's primary responsibility to manage their own projects and submit the required documentation on time to the city, staff believes that the circumstances related to Hurricane Beryl and Centerpoint's slow response times merit an extension to these deadlines. And so these new resolutions are subject to the following requirements being met by the associations by September 30th of 2025, so the end of this fiscal year. Each association must obtain and send to the city a no objection letter from each entity of the utility within the utility facilities for their project area, and they must also send a consent to encroach from any private property owner and enter into an agreement with the city before the end of the fiscal year for this funding to remain valid. Give me 1 second here. Oh, and the account for the fund grant program for fiscal year 24 still has the amount required for these projects, with the total amount requested for all 3 projects being $156,054.01. Let me go through the 3 projects as a reminder real fast. Glen Laurel's project is replacement of their fence along Mason Street between Florence Road and West Airport. They're actually decreasing the scope of their project. Originally, when this was presented to the board, they had go to the next slide here. They were gonna replace fence kind of south of where you see this red line right here, all the way down to West Airport Drive. They found out that there were utilities that were kind of too close to their wall, where they couldn't really dig deep for the concrete wall that they're constructing, and there's not really a lot of area there. And so they're proposing just to complete this section of wall right here, phase 1 only, which would be that 163K cost, and they're still requesting 75,000 from the SL4B. The plan for the wooden fence section that they're not completing is to complete that with replace that with a better wooden fence in the future, because they can't dig deep in that area because of how little area they have to work with there. They received Centerpoint's letter of no objection in February of 25, and they have all the required consents from homeowners already as well. So they would just need to enter into an agreement with the city. As for Sugar Mill, this is a fence replacement on the south side of Jespertal Boulevard from the intersection at Burney Road to Oakland Court. Total cost here is about 246K, and the amount requested is 75,000, which is about 30%. You can see the existing condition and proposed project right there. And then Friends of Old Sugarlands is the addition of 49 new streetlight banners in the hill, with 3 extra banner flags included in the cost there too. They actually fundraised half of the amount of this project cost from their community, so that 6,000 amount right there was fundraised for the community, and they're very eager to start this project after getting a written approval from CenterPoint. And I forgot to mention that Sugar Mill also has a letter of no objection from CenterPoint as well, and all the needed consents from homeowners. So each of these organizations really just need to enter into an agreement with the city. And let me see if I'm missing anything here. Oh, and here are the locations of the light pole banners in the Hill neighborhood. Okay, with that, staff recommends that the SL4B hold a public hearing and approve these 3 funding resolutions.
Thanks, John. So we'll see and hear all persons desiring to be heard on Sugarland 4B Corporation Resolution Number SLB 4 -R-25-01, a resolution of the Board of Directors of the Sugarland 4B Corporation approving a request by the City of Sugarland to fund perimeter fencing to be located along Mason Street between Florence Road and West Airport Boulevard under the council policy for fostering a unique neighborhoods reimbursement grant program using Sugarland 4B corporate funds. Any public comments? We'll close the public comments. We'll now move forward with the consideration of an action of the Sugarland 4B Corporation Resolution SL4B-R-25-01, a resolution of the Board of Directors of the Sugarland 4B Corporation approving a request by the City of Sugarland to fund perimeter fencing to be located along Mason Street between Florence Road and West Airport Boulevard under the council policy for fostering unique neighborhood reimbursement grant program using Sugarland 4B Corporation funds. Any discussions on the board?
This will be a beautiful facelift for a lot of fence in that neighborhood. As I was looking through that map, that's a lot of area that's going to be beautified. This is where our programs work the best, I think, because anybody that enters that area, Jess Pirtle has traveled by like 1 million times, it seems like a day. That whole community is going to just shine when this happens. So good work.
Any other comments? Have a motion? Motion to approve. Second. Vote.
Aye.
Unanimous approval. We'll now move on to receive and hear all persons desiring to be heard on Sugarland 4B Corporation Resolution Number SL4B-R-25-02. Resolution of the Board of Directors of Sugarland 4B Corporation approving a request by the City of Sugarland to fund perimeter fencing to be located along the south side of Jess Pirtle Boulevard from Bernie Road to Oakland Court under the council policy for fostering a unique neighborhoods reimbursement grant program using Sugarland 4B corporate funds. Any public comments? We'll close the public comment. We'll now move forward with consideration and action of Sugarland 4B Corporation Resolution SL4B-R-25-02, a resolution of the Board of Directors of the Sugarland 4B Corporation approving a request by the City of Sugarland to fund perimeter fencing to be located along the south side of Jess Pirtle Boulevard from Bernie Road to Oakland Court under the council policy for fostering unique neighborhoods reimbursement grant program using Sugarland 4B corporate funds. Any board discussion? Have a motion? Second. Vote. Unanimous approval. Last one. We'll receive and hear all persons desiring to be heard on the Sugarland 4B Corporation Resolution SL4B-R-25-03. Resolution of the Board of Directors of the Sugarland 4B Corporation approving a request by the City of Sugarland fund streetlight banners to be located on various streetlights along Main Street between 1st and 7th, Lakeview Drive between Wood Street and 715 Lakeview Drive under the council policy for fostering unique neighborhoods reimbursement grant program using Sugarland 4B corporate funds. Any public comment? Close public comment. We'll now have consideration and action on Sugarland 4B Corporate Resolution SL4BR-25-03, a resolution of the Board of Directors of the Sugarland 4B Corporation approving a request of the City of Sugarland to fund streetlight banners to be located on the various streetlights along Main Street between First and Seventh and Lakeview Drive between Wood Street and 715 Lakeview Drive under the council policy for fostering unique neighborhoods reimbursement grant program using Sugarland 4B corporate funds. Any board discussion?
Thank you. I just want to, for everybody out there listening and watching, okay, the comment needs to be made that I know they worked really, really hard to raise these funds over the last year. They came up with a great idea, and I'm talking the Hill and the residents of the Hill. So I want to commend them for their hard work to get this done, to make some notice in the Hill of who they are and what they're doing. So congratulations, guys. I'd like to make the motion for them in their behalf to get this passed.
Okay. Vote. Unanimously approval. Thank you.
Thank you.
We'll now move on to the workshop. Devin?
Good afternoon, board. So we made a big announcement about a month ago. And so I want to give a more in-depth workshop on the Imperial project. How did we get here? To provide some just more information than I think was discussed previously, and also to set us up for future actions that will be coming forward to this board as well as to City Council in the future. All right, so how did we get here? We were under agreements and negotiations for real property. And so then when we made the announcement of that the city is moving forward with acquisition, we've gotten the question of like, how did we get to this point? And so I wanted to take the time to really kind of talk through some of the history. Obviously, the Imperial redevelopment project has been a effort for 20 years, and it has been the City Council's #1 priority for the last few years. But I really want to try to take that whole kind of time frame into context and really focus on like what's happened in the last year that we've gotten to this point that we are taking these steps and pursuing this different redevelopment model for this project. So from 2003 to 2024, there's been multiple unsuccessful projects led by private developers, sometimes in partnership with the city as well. And so if you've been around the community for a while, you may have participated in a charrette that was like 15 years ago that one private developer did and folks got excited. You may have made real estate decisions based off of thinking that future projects were coming and they didn't come to fruition. So there's been multiple unsuccessful projects for various reasons. But our latest attempt, we were working with Puma, and in the end, that was not coming to fruition for a variety of reasons as well. And so in May 2024, myself and 2 members of my staff, we initiated a tour that we went up to the Austin area to look at several redevelopment projects that had been done up there, and was really looking at like what was the model that was done there that has made them successful. And I'm going to touch on 2 of those projects today. The interesting thing about the different projects that we saw, and there was actually one other one that I still want to go back and see, but they were really in different stages. One was nearing the end of completely build out after 20 years. Another one was like in the middle. So you had seen that they had obviously had some development, and then there were some buildings that hadn't yet quite finished. And then the third one was really just finishing their infrastructure, their roads, their sewer, and we're just opening their first building, which was the public library. And so we saw these different stages and got to talk to the different stakeholders at the city, as well as the developers and other consultants that were involved in these projects on how did they do it, what were their challenges, what went well, what didn't go well, to really educate us on like, okay, how might we be approaching the Imperial project? In August, Puma's project kind of stalled in terms of they really couldn't get the financing that they needed to proceed with the project that they had proposed. And so after kind of doing some of that education, staff really began preparing, like, what are our alternative options to moving forward? This is City Council's #1 priority. As my boss says, failure is not an option, but it is a possibility. But we don't like to think that way, so we move forward. And then in November 2024, we presented this idea of pursuing the acquisition of the historic district and then partnering with a master developer in the future that would work on the city's behalf in order to create the vision, build out the vision that the city and the community would like and expect from this really key site in our community. So with that city council direction, we started taking those steps of what we needed to do to pursue the acquisition process. What did that look like? How many parcels? What was the due diligence that we needed to do? And then in February, obviously, you know, we made the announcement that the city was pursuing the possibility of acquisition and that there would be future actions that were coming forward to council, that some of them have already taken place and there will still be more to come. And so those are some of the things I also want to cover. So that's kind of the big picture there of kind of like, how did we get here? And I want to give you a little bit more detail on some of the information that I talked about in #2 and #4. So one of the projects that we visited was the Bell District in Cedar Park. This is the project that is really just starting to get off the ground. It is a mixed-use district. The city pursued acquisition of multiple pieces of property and also assembling those parcels into something that would be functional for a large development. So in 2014, just kind of a little quick recap on these projects. In 2014, Cedar Park held a comprehensive planning process they called it Imagine Cedar Park. In 2015, Bell Boulevard redevelopment master plan was finalized, and it gauged the desire to revitalize the area and create somewhere special to go. So overall, you know, we've talked about that. We've been talking about this Imperial project for 20 years. Cedar Park had been talking about Bell Boulevard for 20 years in terms of like, what do we do with this street? They had done several different studies or designs that are kind of like, what do we do with this main corridor? And every project, right, every community is different. So you have different factors and different things that you're trying to solve for. A lot of theirs focused on this road and what were they going to do with this road. But there was also a toll road that was coming through and really changing the dynamic of the traffic that was happening on Bell Boulevard. It was going down, therefore the properties were going down, the businesses were not getting the same traffic that they were before. And then also at the same time, the community really wanted, where's the heart of Cedar Park and where's our special place to go? So all these things were kind of coming together for them. They had robust public engagement process. And then also then in 2020, they got to the point that Cedar Park and Red Leaf partners entered into a master development agreement. So actually they entered into it in February 2020. so they definitely had some challenges that they had to work through with then the COVID coming. But again, they have made significant progress and the site infrastructure is done as well as their new public library opened this year. Some of the project goals that they outlined for their project, so as they were having these discussions of like, what do we want for this project, they really laid out some high-level project goals. Economic vitality for this area, like I talked about, the area was going into decline in terms of revenue, sales tax revenue, property value. They wanted to generate some ROI in terms of it wasn't generating revenue for the city and wanted to do that. They wanted to work with the natural assets. You'll see over here, there's kind of a creek area and those types of things in the southern part of the picture. They wanted to maintain mobility in the area. Again, that Bell Boulevard was a big thoroughfare, gain support, and then really important, have that community identity for Cedar Park. And then whatever their vision was, it needed to have that long-term commitment, but be adaptable to the market. And that's going to be the key thing that we're going to have to continue to remember as we move forward with this Imperial project. There has been projects in the past and plans in the past, right, that the site plan didn't work out or they couldn't get financing for. We need to stick to like, what is our overall vision for the area and what are those goals that we want to achieve, but make sure that no matter what, our plan remains adaptable to the market, because the market is going to continue to change and we're going to need to continue to adapt with it as the years go on. For their partner procurement, they wanted to make sure they had the experience and the ability to execute, that they had the financial resources, that they shared in the community's vision for this project, and really having that commitment to partnership. So these were some of like our main takeaways when we went and visited this project that we wanted to bring back here to Sugar Land. So the roles in terms of the city versus the master developer. So the city had oversight and approval, or has oversight and approval. This is still an ongoing project. They were responsible for the land acquisition and assemblage of those parcels. Like I said, their new library opened, and so that was a piece that they were responsible for. Park space as well as community event space. And then for Red Leaf, they managed all the consultants, handled the infrastructure and site developers for the other vertical construction happening on that site. The big important thing is that the developer is responsible to bring the community's vision to reality. And that was what they outlined in their master development agreement, to make sure that that was the roles that everybody was taking moving forward. Another project that we went to was Miller, in also so in the heart of Austin. And so a little bit of background on this. So it's a 700-acre master planned area. It's a mixed-use community. It was formerly the Robert Mueller Municipal Airport. And therefore, it is city-owned. I think there were some discussions, city, county, or something like that many years ago at the time, but it was city-owned and controlled. There was also a strong grassroots community support for the redevelopment of this site. That was really how it started, going, started moving, I should say. They, some of this, folks that had been involved in the project, it was very interesting, like a planner from the city, the master, folks that are on the master developer team. A lot of these folks have been involved with the project since its beginning, like 20 years. They've been on the life of the project from the city side as well as the developer side, which is pretty amazing in terms of how much time goes by and still working on the same project. And they shared some stories of like when they first started this, like they couldn't even get pizza delivered because like on that side of town, they just didn't have those delivery options. And now to hear those stories and to see what Miller has turned into now is really amazing. So they had a master plan that was formally adopted in 2004, and then it had that reuse as an urban village in the heart of downtown was really the vision for the site. So today, I mean, they have over 7,000 residents from a wide variety of size in terms of square footage as well as lots. They have over 30 different product types in the housing not just the housing looking different in terms of design, but actually the different forms that the housing has. There was a variety of home builders, and they really wanted to have that look that it was very well integrated. And so the city made the decision that home builders could not buy like full blocks. They actually had to buy like individual lots so that they could maintain that mixture and that different look of the housing in the neighborhood overall. They talked about kind of what are the architectural controls that they have. And at one point that, you use kind of the same consultants and maybe you do it a lot. And so things start to continue to look the same. But in the city and the master developer in their role, they decided, you know what, everything's starting to look the same. Everybody needs to get new designers. And they made that decision and they moved forward that way. That was the control that they had over the ultimate vision that they wanted to accomplish with this site. So some of the key takeaways that we had, obviously, again, city owned the land. A lot of these, the models that we saw was this control of the land being so necessary to deliver on the vision that was wanted for this site. The master developer was responsible for carrying out that vision and acts on behalf of the city. The planning first, not zoning. They talked a lot about sort of like, it's not really some of the zoning, but they did a lot more about the design and the architecture that it was being allowed there. So it was a little bit more of the details of what they were doing. Design guidelines, again, adopted by council. this was really important, built on a grid to be adaptable to change. So as we're talking about being flexible, like really looking out into the future and, okay, we're going to develop this like this right now, but we need to do it in a way that in the future, when it's going to redevelop, we're not going to be setting up barriers in the infrastructure and those types of things for it to change into a different use in the long run. So for them, an example was in order for some of their financing to really get the project going, they needed some sales tax, and they needed the sales tax for the TERS. So on the northern part, they built a shopping center because they needed that commercial sales tax revenue to come in. But that might not be, and it was kind of the traditional, commercial shopping center, big box type of thing. But they built it on a grid in a way that in the future it can adapt to that change. It's not set in stone to this like huge commercial area. Again, that long-term commitment to the vision, but have to be flexible to the market. And then the interim activations to keep momentum. That was another thing that was talked a lot about in the Cedar Park example as well. So we went on these. They were great, kind of great information sharing. We had some really key takeaways, made us think differently about how we might be able to approach the Imperial project. And then, we brought it forward, and we were thinking like, we are Imperial. This is our namesake, and our crown is in the our crown in the city seal is directly from the crown in the Imperial Sugar brand and everything like that. And so it's so much a part of it. We also I have put a picture there of our city hall because it has the crown right there in the front. This is part of our namesake, and that's why this is so important, that we really want to do this right and commit to that vision and the historic preservation of this site. I included this. I think a lot of you already know that, of sort of like what is our redevelopment cycle. And so we can choose this path of decline, which I think we see that the site is already going in that direction, or we can take this path of redevelopment. So the problem that we were faced with, and these were kind of some of the things we outlined when we were trying to make this decision of how do we move forward. It is the landmark of our city's identity, and it's deteriorating. There's no productivity. There's really minimal property tax revenue that is happening from the approximately 45 acres that we are pursuing acquisition of right now. There's no sales tax generation. And the Children's Museum is really an amazing asset, and it's amazing the traffic that they generate all on their own, being on that site, but it can't be sustained without other activity nearby going on long term. They've done a great job, but they need to be supported with other activity happening. There's also a lack of infrastructure to support future development. There is no infrastructure really on this site. And then another key part is this: we have existing underutilized city assets and agreements that are already related to this property. And some of this I'm outlining because I've gotten the question of like, why this project, right? We've been working on it for 20 years, but we're already in it. We've already made investments. We have agreements. We have assets. The first one there being the container warehouse. So that's where the visitor center is located. We have city office space there, the Heritage Museum, but also where the Children's Museum is. The Children's Museum's on the first floor, and all those other things are on the second floor. We own that building. There is already the TERS that has been set up in that area, and there's the agreements that dictate that. So 50% of the city's tax revenue for that TERS area goes into the TERS. And then we've already done numerous architectural and engineering and other site studies specifically related to the historic district and the Char House on what we can do. So we've already spent time and have some assets in this area. It's a matter of how do we use them moving forward to make this project happen. There was also the previous project barriers, kind of that limited vision, previous visions from multiple developers were really developer driven. Yes, there has to be there also has to be the market realities of those things. And then hasn't really been discussion on what is the expectation of the Char House. We talk about wanting it to be preserved to what level, and really figuring that out, because that is a financial commitment, but it is so important. Not every community can say that they have these historic buildings that are part of their namesake, that are in their community, and what they can be able to do with them. We've really had nobody in the driver's seat, so there's been the multiple failed past developers. The current property owner is not a developer. The adjacent parcels are also owned by another party, so not the same ownership for the overall acreage. And then IRD is the Imperial Redevelopment District, and their role is really limited to their MUD responsibilities. And so again, there's no one in the driver's seat that's really moving forward to make this overall redevelopment happen. There's also regulatory documents. I mentioned a redevelopment agreement, and there's other agreements that have really kept specific things from happening, but haven't made anything happen. And so again, this is just kind of outlining what our thought processes have been looking at other case studies, really identifying what the project or the problem is, what are these project barriers, and then how do we overcome these and move forward with City Council's top priority. So our recommended approach to redevelopment of Imperial was, number one, move forward with acquiring the land. The other steps, which are things that we've already started, is really building that a team of experts. This was also one of the things that we learned on our tours, really making sure that you had the people on board that you need to do this type of project. We hired a broker in order to help us with the land acquisition. We've also already talked to in terms of, are there specialized legal services that we need for the future of the project? We have worked closely with Urbano Architects on the historic preservation. And so making sure that who are the specialty talents that we really need to take on a project like this, and making sure we're building that team of experts. The next step would be stabilizing the char house. So as we've kind of publicly talked about in our announcements, that we're moving forward with this land acquisition, but the next step would be preservation of the char house and making sure we're taking the steps we need to preserve that building for future redevelopment of the site. Then number 4 is going to be developing that market-supported vision and implementation plan. Number 5 is really develop and implement an interim action plan. So this might take few years for this to be built out, but we want to be able to allow opportunities for the community to come onto the site, to have activity, to experience what there is there now. The museum is already there, but what else could be added in an interim basis to keep the momentum for the overall development happening? And then 6, the city selecting a master developer to work on its behalf and develop on that long-term community vision. So I really wanted to lay this out because this hasn't been shared as widely of sort of what are all the steps and what are the things that we're looking at doing right now. It's really focusing on that acquisition of the land, but there's other steps that will have already started, will be happening potentially simultaneously, that we are already lining up in terms of what's going to happen next to deliver on the redevelopment of this project. Financial capacity. So this, we are moving forward with a certificate of obligation for $50 million. That's the ceiling of it. That includes the acquisition, includes the rehabilitation, preservation of the char house, and other long-term capital costs. When we were looking at this project and knowing the other opportunities that we also have in the pipeline, right, our other priorities as well, it was, okay, what's our capacity to do these things? This graph, what it represents is our 4A corporation, our 4B corporation, and our hot hotel occupancy tax. And so you will see that we have significant capacity over the next 20 years to really not only be delivering on this Imperial project, but our other opportunities as well. That red at the bottom that you can barely see represents that $50 million debt service for the CO that we're talking about for the acquisition and the initial costs. Also, that green is that annual reserve for opportunity, right? We put that line item in there for the opportunities that come throughout the year that we can't anticipate and can't budget for. And so regardless, you'll see how much, if taking those 3 funds across the spectrum over 20 years, how much significant capacity there really is to be doing all of these projects and opportunities that we have. So immediate next steps in terms of what the board can anticipate as well as City Council. We're looking at a joint meeting on April 1st to do a public hearing and funding resolution on the Imperial Historic District project for the 4B funding. There would also be an agreement between the 4B and the city for the debt service of the certificate of obligation. And then on April 15th, the city council will consider consideration and action of the certificate of obligation. And then end of May would be the closing on the property. And so with that, I will happy to take any other questions that you might have. I know it's a lot of information and a lot of background, but we really wanted to be able to take the opportunity to kind of explain like how did we get here and what are all the things that maybe we've been working on to get to this point.
Go ahead, Whittier. Just a quick question on this definition, capacity. What does that mean? That green part of or blue part of the graph? I mean, what's the definition of that?
It's accounting for the cash that is in there as well as accumulating as the revenue is coming in.
So this is anticipated revenue for the whole city or just this?
Just for the 4A corporation, the 4B corporation, and hot fund.
Okay. Oh, okay. All right.
So like this is assuming, you know, taking our income statement and looking over like a 20-year period, and you have the revenue that is coming in every year, and it minuses out sort of like our usual, you know, operational budget, anything that has been budgeted for the CIP and those types of things. Even that's why the R4O is on there, because technically the R4O is in that blue, you know, bar chart, but it's just showing that debt service is such a small percentage of the overall current and future cash capacity in the corporation.
First off, I want to save our history. There's no doubt about that. I don't know how deep we want to go into discussion here. I have a million questions. Using Mueller as an example, which is a 700-acre project, multiple residential options, blah, blah, blah. That's never going to happen on 40 acres. Okay, and I know we're just trying to have a conversation here. That'll never happen on 40 acres. So with that said, am I hearing you say we want a long-term property ownership, the city to own this property long-term? Or are we considering another option of, in this process, to have that land acquired from us now that it's unified, putting it back on the tax rolls? People that don't know this building's appraised at $28 million, collecting zero property tax. It's a beautiful building. It's what we are, but I don't really like that idea. And then an emotional concern I have about owning the Char House is, as we try to save the crown of our city, we would also have to say goodbye to what many people fight about regularly during the holiday season, to have the lights, the cross on the building. If the city owns it, that's over. And there are so many emotional factors here as well that, and maybe it's not, but I can't imagine it not being over. There are just so many questions here that to move this thing forward without a deeper, longer discussion, I think everybody's left with questions about what's tomorrow really going to look like.
Yeah, and so one, the purpose of this, and it was just to sort of set the stage and explain sort of our thought process of like, how did we get here that we're talking about pursuing acquisition? You know, I mean, council has already taken some actions, but there are future actions that this board needs to take as well as city council. And so we just wanted an opportunity to provide a little bit more context to this board as well as to the public of like how we got here. I showed the Cedar Park and the Mueller examples, not as saying like, this is the project that we're going to do. It's what are the takeaways from those projects that are good in terms of the overall framework that we want to remind ourselves of, like that it does require a long-term commitment, that we do need to be adaptable to the changing market. I'm not saying that we're going to be building a Miller on these 40 acres. In terms of your question of like, are we going to hold on to this land long-term? That is not the anticipation. We want to get this, we want to remove the barriers. We want to get this site developed to be a benefit to the community as well as an economic development opportunity for this community. And there's many different ways that we can go about doing that, whether that's working with the master developer, them developing and eventually selling. There's so many different like real estate models that could be done. There could be ground leases. You know, there's all sorts of different things, but the ultimate goal is not for the city to maintain ownership of this 40 plus acres of land. We want to remove the barriers, get it developed in the vision and expectation that the city would like, and then get those things back on the tax rolls. But I mean, we own the container warehouse. Do we want to own that container warehouse forever? I don't know. Those are kind of future decisions and actions that need to take place. What I'm focused on right now is like, this is the framework that we are working off of, and there will be future decisions that need to be made. But as long as we kind of have the overall framework and understanding of the direction that we're moving, we'll continue to move in that manner.
And I'm not looking to go deep here about this. I know this is ultimately a city council discussion, but I just want to make sure your intentions here presenting it to 4B is nothing more than informative at this time. And this is giving the community a great window, a look through the window that what they may see in the future, but you're not asking us to commit to anything at this point, correct?
No, but this is just an education because like I said, there are going to be future immediate next steps that are going to be coming to the 4B board as well as to city council.
And by the way, the reason I ask a lot of these questions is because the camera's running and people are asking those questions. So, or they will. Thank you.
I thought that this was an opportunity to maybe provide some of that information.
Perfect. Thank you.
But I mean, it's coming fast. April 1st, we're asking for publication. Yeah, so-
Yes, it is. It is all coming very quickly.
Any other questions?
William Stillwell.
I'm sure we have lots more, but like you said, it's,
This is Mayor, I have a quick comment. I like the other projects because it helps you outline the critical success factors for the future and benchmark as you move forward. But I understand the concept of it just to get us started.
Yes, thank you.
all right, thanks, Devin. We'll go to the director's report.
All right. Well, before I start our director's report, I just wanted to do an introduction of, we've had a new staff person that joined our redevelopment team. So Emily Pollard, there she is. I'm like looking out into, there's so many people. She is our new communications manager and she joined us about a month and a half ago. Just before our Imperial announcement. And so she has been a wonderful asset. We so needed her. We are so happy to have her on board. And so you may be getting emails or seeing her more as she gets more and more into what we need to be doing from a redevelopment perspective for communications as well as engagement with our community on these big redevelopment projects. So when you see Emily, just please give her a warm Sugar Land welcome. All right, moving on to the director's report. So, you know, we like to keep you guys updated on all the things that are happening between the different divisions and departments of the city related to our economic development and things that the 4B board should know about for future, for information as well as future projects that might be coming down the pipeline. So business development collaborated with tourism and redevelopment to host a retail roundtable, bringing together city partners and stakeholders for an insightful discussion on retail market trends, challenges, and opportunities. Also, Alba Pinate-Johnson attended the Greater Houston Partnership 14th Annual Rise to the Top event, highlighting the remarkable journey of women in leadership. It was International Women's Day recently. And then Neon partnered with redevelopment to conduct compliance and safety inspections at the Houston Museum of Natural Science at Sugar Land, as well as Constellation Field. So we own those buildings still, right? We have those lease agreements and those are our responsibility to make sure that those assets are maintained. And so we do have an inspection schedule that we make sure that those things are taken care of and that our asset is being maintained properly. All right, marketing and tourism. Marketing supported redevelopment and civic arts at the Mayfield Park mural unveiling and interviewed the artists and members of the community. So Mayfield Park, right there next to the Imperial Project, Shay did a phenomenal job as well as the artist. They painted a mural on the basketball court there. And so if you haven't seen this, there's really some great images on social media that show like the drone footage pulling out so you can see the entire mural on the basketball court. And there was a really great just neighborhood celebration for this art unveiling. So it was a really great time. All right, for community development, our team is actively working to promote and showcase the impact of the Great Homes program. Recently, the team interviewed the Lopper family, one of our participating homeowners in the Hill, to highlight their experience. Their story, along with new photos and videos, will be used in our outreach materials. So follow along on our channels and the city's channels to see that in the future. For year 3 of Great Homes, we've approved 36 home improvement projects representing over $1 million in total project costs, with $115,000 in committed reimbursements. And then in professional development, Anna Rodriguez successfully completed year 2 of the Community Development Institute, further enhancing our expertise in community and economic development strategies, making sure I wasn't missing that out. There's a few more things on here. It's been very busy. On the redevelopment front, the 52-acre Lake Point Plaza, formerly the Floor Campus, is now live on the market. So JLL has that listing. And we are actively promoting this opportunity through our channels and to ensure strong visibility among potential investors and developers that would be looking at this redevelopment site in Sugar Land. We also met with the Imperial community on March 6th to discuss the Highway 6 residential addition. So this is along not the historic district, but along the other area along Highway 6 near the Constellation Field. So there is a large tract of land that has not been developed for a long time. And so we are moving forward with taking this forward to planning and zoning as well as city council to add housing as a possible use option for that area. And then finally, I already mentioned the unveiling of the Mayfield Park basketball court mural on March 7th. So this says we're over 100 people were in attendance on that neighborhood. Really was a neighborhood party for the art unveiling. If you weren't able to make it, don't worry. We have a video of the event on the next slide. Let's see, is it going to play? Right, just a couple other quick notes, and now one of them just left my brain. There was shaded amazing amount of community engagement and input for this art piece. There was a committee of residents in Mayfield Park that participated in giving their input to the artist of what they would like to see, what represented their neighborhood. And so it really was their artwork that got built and unveiled. And then just not to forget that a significant portion of the civic arts budget is funded by the 4B Corporation. And so you have a hand in making all of these art in our city happen. So thank you. And with that, that's the end of a meeting.
Devin, where was all that community development? What district was that?
I think you get to say that.
All right, we have a motion to adjourn.
To adjourn.
Second, favor?